So, with Wonder Woman 1984 coming out, I really wanted to talk about, well, how I feel about certain things about Wonder Woman. And a big thing that I feel I've always had an issue with is sort of her origin. Her origin never quite feels like something I really want to invest in, or at the very least, eh, this is not the right word for it. I've never felt that Wonder Woman's origin makes sense. Maybe it's because I'm not reading it the right way. Like, maybe I should have really just gone to the original and gone from there, or, posed a better question to Wonder Woman groups. Like, what is it about Wonder Woman's origin that works? And to me, the part that doesn't work is just sort of how she was created. Queen Hippolyta makes some clay, makes a clay daughter, asks the gods for a favor, and boop boop ba doop. There she is, blessed by the gods. And she just sort of meets Steve Trevor, who ends up on Themyscira, and then she goes off and she, saves the day, blah, 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 fights into World War II or World War One, depending on which story you want to tell. Or if you go by the newer continuity, she just sort of ends up in present day Earth. That's sort of it. And the first movie at least tried to sort of explain Diana's purpose, or at least we get this look at Diana's childhood. And while other stories do that, they tend to do that after the fact. So it's usually done because there's a story to tell that involves Diana's childhood. I don't quite think this always works, and when it does, it usually creates sort of, it's only there for a villain to be created. A big thing of this was Thomas Elliot, aka Hush. He was introduced into Bruce's childhood, and it just sort of, that's the only realm in which Hush really exists. So I decided, well, no, let's look up like three Wonder Woman origins, just sort of like talk about them for a bit, and we'll talk about how I rate them. We're gonna go with from their weakest to their best, and so we'll start off with, well, Wonder Woman Earth One by Grant Morrison. So Grant Morrison is a big name in comic books. He did a really great Justice League run a couple years ago, good number of years ago. He did a really stellar Batman run that I think was really. I I really just finished reading it just like a couple months ago for the first time. It's really good actually. And he's currently writing a Green Lantern book, which I'm not 100% on. But when the Wonder Woman was first announced, he was asked to write a Wonder Woman book. And hearing him talk about it, it's interesting, but actually reading it, it's sort of boring. That's sort of it. And I think it's because you have to compare this to the other Earth One books and sort of the direction they choose to go. So we'll use my three favorite Earth One books: uh, Batman, Superman, and Green Lantern. What makes these books great is that the the hero, whether it's Bruce, Clark, or Hal, they're not the same person in the first page of the story that they are on the last page. Granted, Batman still has one more Earth One title to come out, and we're still waiting for Green Lantern Part 3, but Superman finished his. And it was a great story, seeing these characters find their way in the world, seeing them, have these preconceived notions about how this should work, how that should work, and sort of coming to it running full force, whether out of tragedy, out of necessity, or just in a desire to find, one's purpose, one's what one wants to do with their life. Those are all really great stories. With Wonder Woman, that's not there. Diana comes off as someone who just automatically knows everything. She's very intelligent, and that's not a problem with her being intelligent, but it doesn't feel like there's ever anything she can't control. She's totally in command of the story from the first page onward. It's, as a matter of fact, you could argue that the first volume takes sort of great pains to sort of make it that the bad guy is Themysciran society, but even then it doesn't quite commit to it, namely in the fact that it turns out she is the daughter of Queen Hippolyta and Hercules, and that Hippolyta went the extra route to take her egg and take Hercules's god juice and actually go out of her way to make a child out of her hatred for Hercules because of, well, yeah, Greek mythology. And you could say that's all right, but the problem is Queen Hippolyta is so removed from that story That's like, oh, men are terrible. And then at the end, like, yeah, men are terrible, but I did a terrible thing. And that doesn't really do anything. Like, Steve Trevor being black, it went exactly how I thought it would. Steve is going to talk about slavery at the end, but it's not horrible. The problem with Morrison's Wonder Woman Earth One run is that it's just kind of dull. Even Volume Two, which I felt didn't really go the right route. See, the problem I always have with sort of middle of the road, sort of social justice books that they don't really attempt to address anything about the issues of social justice. In other words, Wonder Woman, and she goes to speak at a college, and one of the women says, "Well, you have exactly what we need to kill the patriarchy." I'm like, well, we got to use the word kill. It's sort of like the same thing in Black Panther when Killmonger talks about killing, babies. You're like, hold on, dude. I'm like, racial injustice, sure, but you can't win when you talk about killing babies. You just, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? Sit down, Killmonger, sit down. But I don't know. It's just sort of dull. Like, if you want a really great Wonder Woman run, I wouldn't go to this one. I would go to Wonder Woman: The True Amazon. So Wonder Woman: The True Amazon is possibly my favorite, but I would rank it sort of in the middle because it does go a bit further off. If I had to compare it to something more mainstream, I would say it's like Maleficent, but less terrible. And by less, I mean a lot less terrible. It also feels very out of place for Wonder Woman because it starts off with Diana not even really in the story for a good couple of pages. Namely, the Amazons go to Themyscira, blah, blah, blah. They've been granted immortality. Immortals can't have children, blah, blah, blah. And Queen Hippolyta, she's sad. She sings on the beach. The guy's like, hang on, we're going to fix this. So they make Diana. And because the Amazons don't know really what to do with this with their first child in centuries, they spoil Diana rotten. And it's sort of interesting because we see exactly what Wonder Woman is to Diana in this story. Because it's an important thing to me to find out why is a character like this? What makes them so attached to being this way? With Bruce Wayne, we know it. Parents were shot in an alley, I prefer the Donner's take on Superman. We know his dad has a heart attack and there's nothing he can do about it. Or also his meeting with Lois Lane, with Hal Jordan, the death of his dad as a test pilot. These are all interesting things to me because it puts the mantle at something. It means a bit more as to why they all do what they do. With Diana, that's never really there. Here, though, her being spoiled, it's not just like, oh, she's a little stubborn. No, she's legit spoiled. She's egotistical, but she overinflates herself. A lot of what she does, like when she defeats monsters and saves Amazons, she's not doing it because it's the right thing to do. She's doing it as an egotistical exercise. She's doing it to show off. And when she meets someone who's not impressed by that, her desire to be acknowledged, her desire to, as she says, make her bow to her, leads her to actually get a lot of people horribly hurt and killed. And this is Diana getting banished from Themyscira. And it's beautiful because she cannot return until she understands what it means to be a true Amazon. It's a great story because of that. The idea that the reason Diana is such a great person, the reason she likes to see the best in people, is because there was a time when she was not the best person, and I love that. So yeah, Wonder Woman, written by Jill Thompson, you should probably pick that up. But I would have to say possibly the best one out of what I read is The Legend of Wonder Woman by Renee DeLiz. I hope I said that right. This one's actually a bit more like the movie, just because Wonder Woman goes up and she meets Steve Trevor and she leaves Themyscira to deal with, these issues of war. It turns out the gods are involved. The difference is, I would say this story is a bit larger, and I like this take on Diana because she's just sort of a girl. She's a girl, she knows she's a princess. She doesn't want to be a princess. There's a Disney sort of feel to it, but there's also this sort of insecurity to her that I like. And I felt that the live action one did try to sort of imply that, but it was never really there. Diana is actually one of a group of children that are born every couple of years on Themyscira, blessed by the gods. And these children will one day have a meeting with the god. Sort of think Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Like, they'll be selected by a specific god or goddess, and they'll sort of do their bidding. The Temple of Ares, Temple of Hades. Hey, I was shown a vision by Demeter. Now I recite prophecies from Demeter. That's the thing. The story here is Diana sensing something is wrong, and she sort of understands the truth about the Amazons, about her mother, about the gods. She meets, and the cast of characters, I think it really does sell this. You can sort of understand why Diana is sort of the way she is, why she loves Earth, because of the people she's met. Whether it be Steve Trevor, he's just an upstanding guy in this one. Etta Candy, who's just, oh my god, Etta Candy, dang girl. But or even the fact that she meets smaller characters that she doesn't even realize will be important. She'll walk past Jonathan Kent. She'll talk to Perry White for a bit. She will be part of an event that will send Alfred Pennyworth back home, presumably to later work for the Waynes. And that's cool. It's a fun little Easter egg to get you invested in the wider world, but it's also just fun. Now, granted, I always felt this one was a bit wordy. It felt like it sort of dragged on a bit too long, but it's trying to tell a much bigger story than the other two were, where the Earth One book is trying to tell a 3-part story, one volume at a time, and the True Amazon is very just a short little story. It felt like The Legend of Wonder Woman might have also been trying to really tell a really huge epic, which I think it does a good enough job at. But was also possibly meaning to go further along, like it was supposed to have another part, but it hasn't, from what I can tell. So it's a bit sad, but it's just a really great story with a lot of great characters, whether it be Diana's teacher, Themyscira, her mother, Etta, sweet Etta, Steve, again, they're just great characters that play off of Diana so well that you can't help but like this story. I would say this is the best possible Wonder Woman origin. Or I could be wrong. If you guys have read a Wonder Woman story, Wonder Woman origin story, leave that down in the comment section. What do you think is the best one? Leave that down in the comment section. I'll catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.